Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today, we are thrilled to be speaking to the creatives responsible for the masterful HBO documentary, Master of Light. We're going to kick things off by introducing you today to the AAFCA members who are on the call, starting with our facilitator, Jill Monroe in Los Angeles, Reggie Pounder in Chicago, Albert McGee in South Florida, Nancy Green in Baltimore, Maryland, and Carolyn Hines in Toronto. And we'll be later joined by Katia Woods from Philadelphia. I'm gonna let you guys do what you do so well, and I will see you on the other side.
Eagles versus pigeons, which one would you rather be?
We said I want to be an eagle.
Why?
Because they fly higher than pigeons.
And what does that allow them to do?
See more.
Who are you?
So much of who I am today is my experience growing up in my hometown of Kansas City.
My mother had me at 15.
All I wanted was somebody to love me.
What have I done that's so bad that you can't forgive?
Mama set me up to go to prison instead of her. When the judge sentenced me to 11 years, I said, I'll show you. I think about the system that failed her. I am not what has happened to me.
Your story, your experiences, your being seen, it's no accident.
Well, I kind of always escape through art. If I just took the next step, the world would open up before me. Share this inner light within you. I am not what has happened to me. I am what I choose to become.
Hi, I'm Reggie Ponder, the real critic out of Chicago. And first, I want to echo what Gil said. Congratulations, and thank you for doing this film. It brings up all kinds of emotions. My question is really for George Anthony, and it's a question about balancing the anger, the fear, and hope, and how have you been able to do that, given the fact that I know that you still have hope in all the other stuff that you do with the daughter, with the young man. So how do you balance all that anger, frustration, and hope in this film?
I would say therapy really does help. Being able to have someone that I can talk to. I went through a process of elimination and landed on a really good therapist. And I've been doing therapy since I started a few years back, weekly, ever since. And sometimes a couple times a week, depending on what I'm going through. And talking to him helps give me perspective, honestly. And so I want to champion that right away. I had a friend of mine tell me that therapy is to the mind what flossing is to the teeth. And I would say that is true.
Oh, I don't floss.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I think everything that you see in the movie, everything that George has been through, what gave him hope was art.
Absolutely.
And that is his hope. And it just, leaning into your challenges and putting it into your art is what art can save the world. And it certainly saved George and me too, for that matter, all of us. I'm sure you as well.
Absolutely. Being able to express what you're going through and what, we as Black people go through in an artistic way to, I don't want to use the word palatable, but to at least, to make art out of our pain. I think that's healing, and it's an international language, which I also would notice with the film, that it resonates in different cultures, even though they're not, they don't know the American system.
Healing through creative practice.
Good afternoon, I'm Al McGee here with YETicket.com. Well, my first question, and I have two questions. For you, George, you're an artist and you are in the art business. Who are really your customers? Are they Black people, white, or is it a mixture or things like that? How hard was it for you to see him going through this as you was filming this? How hard was it for you to experience his life as you were filming this documentary?
You know, what we kept feeling, all of us, and I think also Roger, because we were all very involved, is to capture the intimacy, to be true to the story, to also kind of see what we can do to make, you know, to protect and to make sure George is okay through everything, because it's his life, he granted all of us access. And to be true, to really make sure that the truth comes, that people see the truth, and also the systemic truth. I think that was also very important for all of us, that it's not a story of like, oh, you know, he's so talented, so yeah, if you work hard, you can make it. No, there is a system which he literally says, and he literally speaks about that even if you're talented, whatever, there's still that system in place. And I think that helped us, even when we were upset or worried, we knew, but this has to be told, this part also.
Did you have a portion of the question? I forgot my portion.
Oh, you're in the art business now. Who are your customers? Are they Black, white, or the mixture of both? And is it really hard to sell your art?
Yeah, honestly, it's not. It hasn't been very often that a Black person has stepped up and had much to do with any of my trajectory. Honestly, I struggle with that, because coming up as an art student and graduating and starting my own teaching studio, I've only mainly worked with upper middle class white people. My students are upper middle class, you know, whites or just people that are not from my community. And the irony of all of that is those are the people who were there to help me like get there, you know, and yet my service is to my community. You know, I turn it around and give it all back to my people. And so what I'm trying to do is create a space so that we can get more diversity in those spaces, in classical art, in academia. How I've survived and as far as patronage has been mainly those, you know, progressive people in the Atlanta community that could actually afford my art and have the luxury to be able to afford art as a practice, and to come in and purchase classes and stuff from me. And so that's how I sustain myself for the most part in some commission work.
Thank you very much, and continue therapy. I've been going through it since 1987. I've been going to a therapist, so I know it works. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love your Master of Light backdrop. Yeah. That is so cool.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, thank you. That is so nice. You need that.
Well, thank you also. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, Karen Fritzer. Here's What Happened, and Karen Todd's podcast. First of all, thank you so much for making this film and for having it be so open about George's life and experiences. So my question this time around is for George. There's a question you ask at the beginning of the documentary where you're questioning what your purpose is. And that's a question that is a very existential question that many of us face regularly. We're like, what is our purpose on this earth? And my question is I want you to answer this is, do you think that perhaps your purpose is to use your art to show Black people as who they really are? Because your style and your technique is very hyper-realistic in some senses, and is very classical and Baroque in other forms. But do you think that perhaps your purpose is to show the Black community and Black people who they are in a way that they haven't seen themselves, and for people to see Black community, the Black people, in a way that we aren't necessarily shown in art?
I'd say short answer to that is yes, but not necessarily limited to that only. But yeah, absolutely, that's definitely been a motivation of mine. I had a person ask me a question about that recently, and I thought about Muhammad Ali. in terms of what was his purpose. You know, here we have this great athlete, and it's a good question of was it his purpose to just be a great athlete, or was his purpose something greater?
Great, thank you. And I love the reference to Muhammad Ali, because his sport is what helped to push forward the civil rights movement. So you can use your art to do so many things. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nancy Green with Film Critique. And I wanted to know, you talk in the movie about therapy, and we see you going to therapy. Can you talk about how that has impacted your art, and if you feel like it's made improvements, or you had some struggles with incorporating that?
Very much a process of struggle. But when I say healing through creative practice, it's real. I mean it, because my art is literally a mirror of what's happening inside of me. So it gets to be this template through which I can channel, you know, maybe this idea of how I want to see my mother, or maybe this darker side of myself can come out in a self-portrait or this depiction of my nephew, because that's definitely not his character, or who he is as a little boy. And somehow in the painting of that and the mirroring of that on the canvas, there's some reconciliation and healing that takes place with certain aspects of my own psyche. And so I really do use my art as therapy. My therapist, I write my dreams down every day. We go into dream interpretation and analysis. I paint those dreams. It's just very much linked, and it kind of always has been.
Hi, Jill Monroe, Access to the Life. When you make the decision to document your life, especially your story, with as many personal stories that are involved in telling this story, but it also involves the stories of other people, your mother, others, where there's difficult relationships to explore, how much conversation happens before you decide to go ahead and do this? And then when they agree to be on camera, are there conversations before to set up the conversations that you have on camera, or the situations you explore? And what was that experience like? Because in a way, it's like addressing it twice, because you address it on camera in the moment, and then whatever the fallout is afterwards.
The style of the doc really mimics closely the style of painting that I do. And that's this unstructured, naturalistic verite style that honestly kind of happened for the most part that way. So when you see my surprise when I'm learning that my mom had something to do with my incarceration, more than it was honest. Like, it came out just like that. There was no rehearsing the moment. It was like, when it was said, I looked up, and I did look at Rosa at the same time, and she was just on it, kind of recording it. And we just continued. And a lot of moments was just spontaneous like that. And I think that's honestly the gift of having a woman director like Rosa, who's very intuitive and just was like, just responding to the moment. And she didn't allow for that. Honestly, that's just not her approach. You know, I would try to think in terms of a plan, or, you know, have some kind of structure, because you're going into the trenches. And everything that we may have thought that way around, none of it made the film. It was all the most spontaneous, natural moments that ended up eventually getting edited in. And so we just embraced the chaos, honestly.
That's good. Good way of putting it. Embrace the chaos. Yes.
And being there all together, right? Because Rosa did a lot herself. She shot also a lot herself. We didn't have like a big crew. It was really small and intimate. I would wait like in another apartment or close by, just, you know, maybe be there or support, but not be in there, because it's in their house, in their apartments, in their lives. And being together, I think, right? Just spending New Year's together, spending Christmas together. And then, let's, like just what George said, let's take the camera, but really being with you.
Yeah, lots of quiet moments.
In their lives, yeah.
Just you know, human moments, dancing, enjoying one another, and kind of allowing it to happen.
George, I want to kind of tap into that creative part of you and ask, you said that in the film that the world is really set up for certain people to fail. And I wonder, as a dreamer, as an artist, as a hopeful person, what would the picture of success, what does the picture, if you were to paint it, of success look like?
I know, it's really good. Well, it's kind of funny because, I mean, there was a scene in the film around the fire and my brother was asking me, what is success? And I'll just kind of stick with that, this idea of accomplishing whatever one's goals is. But in my instance, I'm assuming you're asking, what are my goals? Because it can vary from person to person. We all have different goals. And the accomplishing of it might be your definition of success. And it'll differ from person to person. So honestly, just being able to continue to heal through my creative practice, to have the space and the freedom to make art as a form of healing, but it's also initiatic. Like I learned so much in the research, in the making of it, that like it transforms, it's a transformational process. And I am appreciating the privilege that that is. It's kind of a privilege. And I mean, I don't take it lightly. And so to be able to just be in my studio or being in my creative, safe space, sacred space, able to do what I love, and have enough of my life would be my idea of success off the fly. You know, I could say a lot of things, but I'll just say that.
I love that, but I saw that both of you as well kind of sparked to that question. So if you have a thought on that, please share.
Yeah, okay, yeah. No, I think what I love so much about working with George and Roger is working on such important stories and being artistically beautiful. What I love very much is that we were able to make an artistically beautiful film, also inspired, like, you know, George said, by his style, by the, you know, darkness and light, all the colors, and also be truthful about societal injustice. And for me, that is for me personally, that's my definition of success. I love doing this work, and I'm very grateful for One Story Up for giving me this amazing opportunity to be a producer on this. And that we're part of this is literally my biggest dream come true. I'm from the Netherlands. My mom is Russian. My dad is from West Africa, from Cameroon. And being a little girl and thinking that I would ever be in New York City, sitting here with this panel, with this movie, with these two people, I would not have, I never would, no. So I'm literally living my success, and with ethics, which for me is very personally important, because, you know, that's, you know, how I was raised. So I'm living it. This is it. I'm living it, to be truthful and to make something incredible and be with wonderful people. Yeah. Yes, your turn.
I was stalling. I mean, success for me is being true to myself as an artist. Success for me is when I look at a piece of work, whether it be a documentary or a narrative film or VR, whatever I'm doing, have I been true to myself? Have I been honest? Have I gotten to a deeper truth that is maybe a little frightening for me? And have I exposed that truth and done something that I think will touch people's hearts? That's what success is.
Thank you very much. This is Al McGee again. This is to the producers. How did you get to know about George, and then how did they bring this project to you where you wanted to produce it? And what got you excited about producing this documentary about George? And George, my final question to you is, you mentioned that darkness is my friend. is that still true to your life? Let's start with the producers first.
Yeah. Rosa had come to me. I met her at an event I was showing a film, American Jail, about mass incarceration in Amsterdam. And Rosa came to me and she said, I have a trailer of something I've been working on, and I'd love for you to take a look at it. I dismissed that because I always get approached by people wanting to show me stuff and wanting to, pitch stuff. And but a few weeks later, George sent some rays through the solar system, and he said, and it connected with me, and I was just sitting in my apartment in Amsterdam, and I said, I better go look at that trailer right now. And I went and looked at the teaser, and I was blown away by the power of the storytelling and the power of the story. And George's story, which is, inspiring, and his talent as an artist. And I just couldn't believe it. And I said, I've got to produce this film. And I invited Rosa to lunch and told her I wanted to produce the film. And we came to New York, and I connected with Ilya, who's in the other room, who's a producer in the Netherlands, and Nusha, and we pitched it in New York, and there was a bidding war, and the rest is history.
Oh, great. And
sure.
Is your story the same?
Yeah, so I was working at One Story Up as starting out and learning the trade, coming from another career in the Netherlands. I was a writer, actress, producer of theater, TV, and activist. So to be working at One Story Up was already amazing, just doing research and helping out with other projects. And then all of a sudden, I see George, Rosa, and Ilya walking in, and all of a sudden George was like, I think you're ready to, do more. So I want you to be part of this as our American producer. So, I mean, completely blown away. And also for George and Rosa and Ilya to have that trust, Roger had seen my work and seen me working with him, but for them to trust me on such a big project was also, I'm so grateful for that. And yeah, I had seen this, Roger had shown me, what do you think? And incredible, blown away, two artists working together, Rosa and George together, making that was, yeah, literally amazing.
Wow, that's really great. And George, you stated that darkness is my friend. Is that still in your life, or you got more light in your life now?
I think the way to interpret that may be, okay, how about this? We all should be familiar with Frankie Beverly and Mays.
Love him.
Joy and pain.
And pain, yeah.
Joy and pain.
It's like sunshine and rain.
Sing it.
Joy and pain.
Sunshine and rain. But he made a point. He said, so just like a flower needs sunshine and rain, it's all right. They're both one and the same. And I mean, I was with a friend who helped produce Lauryn Hill last night. She had a song called Everything is Everything. And it's this idea, like Rumi said, what hurts you blesses you. Darkness is your friend. And the embracing of the beauty that could be found in life's most harsher moments, the lessons that could be learned, these principles have been communicated since the beginning of time. So my embracing of darkness as a friend is speaking to that truth, as well as speaking to my dark mother and how we should all look more at our own unconscious shadow selves and mind that for the beauty that could be found there. And it'll, if you don't, it won't be a friend to you, that's for sure. It'll come to the surface in the forms of projections, complexes, so I got acquainted with my dark side and was able to reconcile that. And because of that, I feel like it makes me a more whole person, as opposed to a person who may not have gone through anything or decided to deal with those more harsher truths or memories or traumas. And so I embraced it. I look for the beauty in it. And ways to grow from it. And in that sense, it was a friend to me. And I think in that sense, it's a friend to all of us, and that we should all not run from life's pain, but stand it, face it, and try to see what we can extract from it.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Much more success to you in your life. I really appreciate you. And this is a great documentary. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carolyn again. So earlier, George, you mentioned that the way how the film is shot is similar to your painting style. And that was something I had picked up during watching, because it's not linear. And it's not like you can't predict what's going to come next, which is like a painting. Like you can start painting the nose, then you move on to painting a different body part. But for all three of you, I want to ask, what about creating this film made you see yourselves and the art of painting differently? For you, George, like what was it like being able to basically literally step outside yourself and see how you are as a painter, and how you are as a painter with regards to how you relate to your family, especially your nephew, because you're becoming an inspiration for him and how he sees himself as a young Black man growing up and how he sees himself as an artist. And for you, Roger and Anusha, for the two of you, how was it like? What was it like watching this film and watching how it was pieced together as a piece of artwork in and of itself, reflecting George's work, and how that made you see the art of filmmaking differently than how you thought about it before? So, George, we can begin with you, and then we can go with Anusha and Roger.
Yes. Okay. Well, as an art student, my teachers introduced me to filmmaking. They told me, if you want to paint better, study film. And they even gave me a few films to look at, and had sent me links to roundtable discussions with filmmakers. And then I would meet this she's like, Rosa was made to do this film. She was perfectly made for the job. And I meet her, and we're able to find the commonality between cinema, which to me is the synthesis of all the art forms. It brings all the art forms together beautifully. I believe if Rembrandt or people like Da Vinci, even older than him, were alive today, they'd be filmmaking into cinema. And that was my goal all along. And I was able to study it from the perspective of fine art theory, find that commonality with my filmmaker. And yeah, like that really informed my practice as a painter, and also was the beginning of my apprenticeship as a filmmaker as well. How did it impact it? The study of light, the study of design, how to crop and find beautiful cropping within the frame, and you know, the emotional impact, the metaphor of light, the emotional impact of how to just frame a shot. Like we all have this similar kind of thought processing, whether I'm making a composition from a painting or for a painting or a photograph or cinema. And it really informed my work through the back door in all those ways, and more than I can even mention now. And I'm sure the director will probably say the same thing.
Yeah, so for me as a producer, I knew already of Roger's work, so that's why I was so lucky to be become part of One Story Up. And I've seen, of course, I've seen Music by Prudence, God Loves Uganda, live animated, and like what Roger said, to be truthful to yourself, to the story, to make something you really, really believe in, and bring the best, out of it. That was for me incredible to see with this movie, which is such an intimate story, which is so also George's story, that we were able to do that. It turned around everything for me about making film. Also because, as we all know, there's a lot of films that are made about African American pain, suffering, made by white people, by white directors, white producers, white executive producers, and it was amazing to work within a black-owned company. And Rose as a white director, but she gave a lot of space to me, even as a starting producer, to everybody who was involved, and our team was very diverse. And it was amazing to see that is an incredible important role to keep on going and to keep, to do that we can tell our own stories. For me as a producer, that made this completely clear that we can do that and that we have to do that and that you see this, the beauty that comes out of that. So yeah, it was amazing.
And for you, Roger?
I think every film has a life of its own, and it becomes something completely unique. And this film is such an organic film that grew out of the art itself and out of George's art and his approach to art, and that the film and the material, the subject, can meld together beautifully. This is an example of all, organically connecting together to be part of the storytelling in such a beautiful way that you don't often see in filmmaking. A lot of times in documentary, there's a separation, kind of a little bit what Rishi was saying too, there's a separation between the subject and the process of this filmmaking. And this was something that was just organically fused together. And what you get is this absolutely stunning and truthful portrait and story that has its own unique sensibility that is so closely connected to the sensibility of George's paintings. It's like George's paintings come to life in a film, as a film. And that's what is so beautiful.
Yes. Yeah, George's painting come to life in film. As a film. Exactly, as a film, yeah.
No, thank you so much. And I love that the film is so raw and it's so unpredictable and it's not like super structured, because that's what painting is. Like, even the way how it starts out with the palette, with the colors being mixed with the palette, like you got to go from the raw material and you can only find the beauty in it once you see the final picture. You don't know what you'll end up with at the end. So I love that you guys were so open and honest with the film, and that George, that you and your family were so open and honest with each other in the film. So like, it's hard to watch those kind of things on screen sometimes as people who aren't related to what we're seeing as an audience. It can be hard to watch families fight and struggle when it's a real family and not like a scripted show and not a scripted film. So we appreciate all of the honesty that you guys show to us and that you show to each other. Thank you.
So I wanted to know from each of you, what were some of the major challenges that you had in bringing this documentary to the screen, and how did you overcome them?
I mean, definitely also COVID. That was,
COVID.
In the midst of the pandemic. And like right at the start, we didn't know what was going to happen or what was going on. So that was real.
Yeah, I mean, Rosa spent most of COVID in, locked in an apartment in Atlanta. And COVID is always, it's been a challenge for all of us, especially in filmmaking and documentary. So that was a challenge. Documentaries are written in the edit room. And when you have such a wealth of material, lots of material, and putting that together in a cohesive story, and I think Ephraim Kirkwood, our editor, who is a first-time African-American editor, did an amazing job. Ephraim is a discovery. He's someone who, here at One Story Up, we just nurtured and gave him this opportunity, and look what he's done. Yeah. He's created this amazing masterpiece. But I think it's always a challenge when you're in the edit room and you have, 1,000 hours of footage. You have to make it to an hour and a half. You have to create an hour and a half cohesive film. He did it in such an organic, beautiful way that fit with the organic beauty of George's art.
Yeah, and George trusting us to, giving that, because for him, to trust Ephraim to do that, and of course, One Story Up.
Yeah, and I think also, and I think also when you're in a crisis, and there are many, as you see in the film, many crises that happen, that's a challenge. What do you film? What do you not film? you know, where is George in this moment when he's dealing with the crisis of his siblings or his mother? Like, you know, that's always a push-pull struggle in documentary and real life. We're dealing with real life situations, and people are, you know, being incarcerated and going to the hospital and getting arrested. I mean, this is like the real life. And how do you, you know, when do you, is there a moment where you put down the camera and you're like, oh, this is crazy, or do you keep going and you know, stay calm? Those are each of those moments, and you see in the film, it's a challenge for the filmmakers and a challenge for George, he's going through it, but he's also thinking about the film. So he's like thinking on two different levels. He's like, okay, I'm going to bail my mother out of jail, but also I'm making a film. And so it's like, that's not easy. That is really, really, really difficult. So yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think they answered exactly how I would have answered in the portions that were about me, because they felt it more than anybody else, for sure. They were right there. And those creative struggles were real, because I was ripping the Band-Aid off of wounds that I didn't have to go back so deep into. I could have just ran as far away from my family as I could get and never turn around. And so the creative process would have been like the hardest part, because it had so much to do with my healing journey. And it was an honest healing journey. It was raw. It was organic. Things happened that came up, unstructured, unplanned, and we just had to handle it in real time. And so to echo what they said, it's just juggling of art and life and bringing the two together as, you know, as my challenge, my main challenge. To approach the easel or to approach your craft, and you have all this chaos and turmoil, and like Roger said, like living in crisis mode from day to day, and yet you're supposed to bring this equanimity to the easel and make something beautiful. That's when I began to see how much privilege it takes to make that kind of art.
Yeah, it's really a luxury to be able to
it's a whole luxury.
Yeah, let me be a painter. I'm just gonna close the door, just be in my studio. Don't bother me for 8 hours because I'm an artist. Ooh, that's, wow. That's
right.
Such a privilege and luxury. Who can, you know, not a lot of people who can afford or can do that.
Nice, thank you so much. And I thought it was a really thoughtful film, and the artwork was great. And I would actually like to see this as a series, because I'm very curious about you know, your relationship with your mother and the things that you're going through. So yeah, it was very nice. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Follow George around.
Yeah. I'm working on some screenwriting, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Hi guys, sorry, tardy. I was a little tardy. Katia Woods, Composition with the Philadelphia Tribune. I think one of the things is that, you know, too often when we talk about someone going to prison, we want you to be like, there's like your rehabilitation process has to be like really enduring and hard, and people want you to endure hardship. How much do you want this movie to inspire the people also take a different approach? Because some people are in prison due because of series of failures from us in society that capitulated in you getting there. It's not just like you, I mean, some people are, but not everybody that ends up in prison woke up just being a horrible person. Most people, it's a series of things that lead to this outcome.
And the question around that, can you just ask that question?
And my question is like, how much do you feel like we need to take a different approach? It can't just be about rigorness and harshness, that also needs to be like, okay, let's figure out if this, because I think a lot of people are salvageable, you know what I mean? But prison pretty much is set up to be like, make you worse instead of better. And you had the luxury of having the art, but a lot of people don't have that. So what is it that you want people to see about that process, about saying, hey, not everybody, we can't use that approach with everybody, you know, just being harsh. Some people need healing, like real healing.
Right. That was definitely a huge message that we wanted to send as well, because not everyone deserves to be discarded or to be seen as just this super predator or somebody that should be murdered in the streets for wearing a black hoodie or any of that. And those stereotypes are what I want to change. And someone in a similar situation in prison, I think scenes in the film really speak to the answer or my feelings around how I would answer that when I was, it was New Year's Eve and I was talking to my sister. I get these questions all the time around like, what makes you so different than all your other siblings? Like you grew up in the same household as them and you know, you guys have the same influences and programming. And I think the answer to that question is similar to the answer that I would give to your question, is this idea of having this fire or this determination inside of you to decide that you're not what has happened to you, but choose what you want to become, in a sense. And like you got other people telling you what you are, you know, you got inmate numbers, you're a convict, you're, you know, the judge didn't see me as worthy of much. And it took a tremendous amount of inner will and determination to just deprogram, you know, all of these ideas that I grew up having about myself in the movies I was watching and the music I was listening to and all of my influences. And I just got introduced to certain knowledge and books that felt like they were written by the hand of God themselves. And I honestly began to see the systemic trap and thought, like, why would I walk into it? I wouldn't, you know, whoever or whatever it was that set this up, the system to be the way that it is, regardless of how, you know, people may feel about it, now that I'm aware of it, it's a choice. And it really fueled that spirit of wanting to prove wrong the judge, maybe, who thought my life was worthless, or the people who walked away from me. But at the end of the day, whatever a person does to find that inner strength, you got to find it, because I mean, what may motivate one person may not motivate the other. I just had to psych myself out. You know, I saw prison as college. You know, I'd be in there watching Stomp the Yard. I go to my cell and cry and think like, okay, I'm not about to sit in this TV room and just watch movies all day with everybody else. What's the movie list this weekend? Or what we playing cards, we playing table games, we playing football, basketball. I said, no, I'm gonna like grow wings that'll help me fly and never come back to a place like this. And I spent every waking moment obsessively focusing on my craft, reading the books that would educate me about it, only talking to people that could like raise my consciousness. I was meditating with Chinese Tai Chi masters, looking like a weirdo, but just determined to never come back, because I saw these people had job security centered around me coming back. Like they didn't have no programs for my rehabilitation at all. Like I had to order my art supplies. I had to, you know, they had jobs there for pennies on the hour, and they were trying to force you to do this slave labor. And I just began to see that, and I didn't blame anyone but myself. Like, how did I walk into this trap? How did I not see the setup? You know, I look out my window, liquor store, pawn shop, drugs, dope fiends, right in front of me, drugs right there. How do I not walk into that? And that's what I began to see. And that's what empowered me, because at that point, I knew that there were people, like I told my nephew, I'm talking to myself, there's people that don't want to see you live out here. And he's like, hold on, that actually scares me. He's like, I get that, but I said, I get that, but what you can do is arm yourself with knowledge. And that's what I did. So I was talking to myself in a lot of ways when I was talking to him. I was talking to my younger self and talking to other people who might find themselves. I mean, it's all in the film. It's really all in the film.
What makes it so difficult is it is an industry, right? Prison system in America is an industry. You know, I can list all the numbers of how unfair balance it is, how many, you know, white people in prison versus black people. If you look at, you know, how drugs is being prosecuted, if it's weed or if it's crack or if it's regular cocaine, we all know that.
I was in there making Bob Barker soap and shower shoes and clothing for different organizations. And it just seems to me like prison is a modern kind of extension of the transatlantic slave trade. And that's just, if you know that, it's like a roach, right? Like you see somebody, a roach, you see a roach, if you try to kill a roach, it's gonna run and fight for its life. I mean, I just think that's natural for anybody to do once you become awake to the fact that someone's trying to take it. I just fought.
Thank you. Glad you're here and you made it out to the other side.
Thank you.
Jill Monroe, again, this question is for all of you actually, but starting with George. You mentioned earlier about how the consumers of your art, as well as the students that you teach, are upper middle class, often not Black. So as producers of this film, and for you as being the subject of it and knowing that information, who do you hope that this film reaches and touches? And how do you think that we can introduce art back into the Black community?
Well, historically, the HBCUs were always some of the most supportive patrons of the African-American artists. And so a lot of our campaign and outreach is getting my teaching studio, which is in Atlanta, involved with some of the HBCU efforts, similar to like one of the only African-American artists that we know of, Henry Ossawa Tanner. He moved to Atlanta, did something similar, I think, with Clark. But getting this kind of training, these principles into certain communities that I believe it helps people on a behavioral level, you know, mental stability, you know, being able to paint and as, you know, as a form of healing through creative practice, as an outlet. It's just so many benefits to it that's where, you know, the direction I choose to go in with helping the young people, the schools, yeah, those institutions, academia, that's kind of the direction I wanted to go. Because I started a teaching studio. And although I do teach people from privileged communities, I make space for the younger people. I lead tours to Egypt. I'm trying to get young people, I'm part of an excavation site in Egypt where we're excavating the tomb, and all I see is young white kids there getting their credits, you know, for their degree program, and nobody from our community yet. I'm at a 25th dynasty tomb looking at African faces on the wall. And so these are the kind of efforts that I'm making that are much more long-term, that are involved in way bigger dialogues than you know, what may be trending at the moment.
Yeah, we work with Represent Justice for an outreach to get more information out there, and for schools, and also we have talks with like universities, with also HBCUs, juveniles, and also with juvenile detention centers, also organizers, and also in the art world, movers and shakers in the art world who need to invest. But also, I mean, politically, like in New York City, I went through the same with my children. If your child goes to public school in a neighborhood where the housing prices are lower, the public school gets less money than a public school in a neighborhood where the housing prices are higher. I mean, that's just a literally unfair political, you know, systemic injustice that we also need to be very aware of. So the kids, the public school where my children went to, didn't have those kind of art programs because they didn't get the same money as the kids did in also a public school in a quote unquote better neighborhood. So that is a systemic injustice we have to really, really, really realize. Again, goes again to the same, the luxury of making art, of being educated in art. Maybe if you don't get it at home, but you also don't get it in school because of a systemic injustice. So I think we all, as as Black people, have to be very aware of that politically and speak to our local, local politicians, be more involved politically. And that's also what we're doing with Represent Justice. So these are issues we are discussing.
Absolutely.
Okay, this question is to George. How do you market your art? Do you do that yourself personally, or you have a agent or somebody like that to help you market your art?
Short answer, I haven't been like focused on the marketing aspect of things, just more so consuming, studying, and now is the time for a lot of that. And so the output is increasing and picking up, and now the conversations are arising around management, representation, marketing, and that is very much still being discussed right now. We're looking at an exhibition that's going to tour with museums, hopefully.
Oh, that's great. I want to thank you very much. And also I want to thank the producers again. Thank you very much.
Hi, so my last question is for George. So I was very curious about what was it about the classical style of painting as we know it that drew you to it as an art medium, apart from other different versions of painting that drew you to that medium, especially because it's one that we don't necessarily get to see Black people depicted with often. So what was it that drew you to that particular art style, and how has that affected the way you relate to your nephew, because he's so much younger? And I noticed that his drawing is more of a animation or animated cartoon style of art when he was drawing. So how has that helped you with relating to your nephew?
So I like this idea of truth and beauty as truth. And so I like truth and looking for the beauty in nature that in truth as well. And there's these philosophers in the early 19th century. There's just been a lot of structural and systemic racism with phrenology, with skulls, with like Africans and African art, what Africans can do versus what the European artists can do. And a lot of those narratives came in around the 19th century. And there was a guy named Kant who would make these statements about how Black people can't like do it. They can't look at something, conceptualize it in their mind.
Major philosopher.
And reproduce it. And this was part of a time when like all the industries had like these racist ideologies toward people that look like us. And my school was born out of that. My school is a proponent of it. And this actually is a huge motivating factor for me. When I like began to understand how laughable it was to my teachers, to the academic art world, that I would approach this discipline of trying to actually understand anatomy, physics, color, perspective, all of these alchemy, all of these things I heard you speak about, like this alchemical stages earlier, like this stuff. Composition, design, they don't think the African mind can even begin to conceive of it. And I wanted to challenge that.
And plus you found out the source.
And then just happened to find that everything in the Renaissance, how the Moors contributed, how, they got it from North Africa, like, it's endless. And so I became very much inspired by the African contributions to world history via fine art and the Renaissance, the history of the Renaissance, the classical art.
Great, thank you so much. And yeah, the Moors, and I know about phrenology because I read about that in Nell Irving Painter's book, The History of White People. She talks a lot about how Black people were pushed out of the art scene and sculpting and all of that. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah, it's a connection between all of that and what we're all experiencing today collectively.
First universities were in North Africa and East Africa. That were the first universities on the whole planet. One was started by a woman. So in Africa, when Europe was literally in the Middle Ages.
Let's give it up to Timbuktu and Mali.
Yes.
Thank you. This documentary is tremendous, and we certainly hope that it finds the audience that it deserves. On behalf of the world's largest group of Black film and TV critics, thank you for watching this edition of Africa Roundtables. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Black film critic. Yeah.